Well, welcome to our lesson on special products of polynomials. In this lesson, we will be finding special products of binomials and developing shortcuts to help us to find those more quickly. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's explore some binomials. We're going to be squaring all of our binomials and see if we can find a pattern that we can use to take a shortcut. So the first problem we have here is 2t plus 2 the quantity squared. And we already know how to use FOIL, so what we're going to do is we're going to write that as 2t plus 2 multiplied by 2t plus 2. It's just multiplied by itself 2 times. Well, when we do the first terms, 2t times 2t, we get 4t squared. Our outside term right here gives us 4t, and our inside term gives us 4t. So we have plus 4t twice, right? And then our last term is 2 times 2, which is plus 4. Well, our outside and inside term always combine, so we have 4t squared plus 8t plus 4. Well, that's interesting. We'll take a look at that in just a second. Let's go ahead and look at what we get for the second problem here, 4y plus 3 multiplied by itself twice, or squared I should say. 4y plus 3 times 4y plus 3. And again, multiplying the first terms, 4 times 4 gives us a 16. Y times y is y squared. Our outside term is plus 12y. Same thing for the inside term, plus 12y. And the last term is plus 9. 3 times 3 is 9. So again, combining our outside and inside terms, we get 16y squared plus 24y's plus 9. Well, let's take a look at what's going on here. Do we see any patterns emerging in these two examples? And the thing that I would like you to notice is if we take 4y and square it, we get 16y squared. If we take 2t and square it, we get 4t squared. So the interesting thing so far is when we square the binomial, the first term is squared. The next thing I would like you to notice is that when we take the second term and square it, we end up with this term. Take a 3 and square it, and we end up with 9. So that's kind of interesting. How do we get the middle term? Well, funny you would ask. So let's take a look at, let me take some of the color out of this and show you how we get that middle term. So the middle term turns out to be, if we take these two terms and multiply those together, that would give us 4t, right? Whoops. See if I can write that. So 2t times 2t gives us 4t. Try again. So 4t. And we need an 8t. So what if we double it? So I'm gonna call this MAD. Multiply and double is what that stands for. So we're going to take that times 2, which gives us 8t. Does it work for the other problem? Well, let's check this out. Let's come over here. If we multiply 4y times 3, what does that give us? 4y times 3 gives us 12y, right? Well, then if we double it, we end up with our 24y. So here is our pattern shortcut. Here is what we need to see is happening with these problems. The shortcut is, if we have any binomial, two terms together, and it's squared, the shortcut is to square the first term, multiply the two terms together and double it, that's the 2ab, and square the last term. So let's take a look at some other ones. What happens if we don't have just plus signs? What happens if we have some minus signs in here? How do we handle if we have some negatives? Well, t minus 5 multiplied by t minus 5. When we do this one, our first terms give us t squared. Outside is minus 5t. Inside is also minus 5t. And our last term is plus 25. Negative 5 times negative 5 is plus 25. So we end up with t squared minus 10t's plus 25. Well, does that follow the pattern that we came up with in the last one? If we take this one and square it, we get this one. If we take this one and square it, we get the plus 25. If we multiply these two together, we get negative 5t. Double it, we get negative 10t. So the pattern holds true. So let's go ahead and use the shortcut. If we think this is going to work, let's use the shortcut to calculate the next one and see if we get it right. So on the next problem, 2x minus 3, we're going to square the first one. That'll give us 4x squared. Our last term, 3 squared, will be a plus 9. It's actually negative 3 times negative 3. Multiply these two together and I get minus 6x, so I should get a minus 12x in the middle. Okay, so you want to verify, so let's just check it out this time. If this time it works, then we're going to call it good, and that's going to be our pattern for using any binomial squared. So 2x times 2x is 4x squared. Our outside term is minus 6x. Our inside term is minus 6x, so we do get the minus 12x. And our last term, negative 3 times negative 3, is plus 9. So it definitely works. So here is your pattern shortcut. When you have a difference of two numbers squared, it's the square of the first term minus twice the product of the two numbers plus the last one squared. So remember the shortcut. I think about this one. To get this middle term, you multiply and double. Okay? So it's square, mad, square. So that's the shortcut if you want to try to remember what the formula is. So here's some practice. Let's go ahead and work on these 4 problems. And we want to go ahead and find the product. So I'd like you to try to use the shortcut on these. I will work through part A for both of these. Actually, I'll work through part B. How about that? And you can work through part A. So for our shortcut on part B, we want to square the first one. 3 times 3 is 9. X times x is x squared. The last term squared is a plus 25. And then the middle term, we're going to get mad, right? We're going to multiply and double. 3 times 5 is 15. And 15 times x is 15x, but we got to double that and get 30x. And sign in the middle is positive. So how about over here? X minus 3 quantity squared. We're going to square the first one, square the last one, multiply together, we get 3x, double it, we get 6x. So I went ahead and did number 1. I think I'll have you do number 2 and bring that answer to class. Sum and difference. So now take a look at these products where we don't have something squared, but we have almost the same thing, but the signs are different. So what happens when we do this? Well, the first terms, when we use FOIL, give us x squared. And the outside term gives us minus 6x, so keep track of your signs here. The inside is plus 6x. And then the last terms, a plus 6 times a minus 6 is a minus 36. And look what happens to these x terms. Plus 6x and minus 6x drops out. So we're just left with x squared minus 36. How about the one on the right? What happens here? First terms, okay, so these are exactly the same, except they have different signs. First terms gives us 9x squared. Outside term gives us minus 12x. Inside term is plus 12x. And our last terms, plus 4 times minus 4, is a minus 16. And again, we can see the plus 12x and the minus 12x add to 0. So we're left with 9x squared minus 16. So what's the pattern? Well, the pattern is this. All we have to do if we want to multiply two binomials that have different signs is we have to square the first one and subtract from that the square of the last one, a squared minus b squared. So the first one squared and the last number squared, and they're separated by a minus sign every time. So that should help us be able to go through these problems very quickly. So finding the product from the shortcut, we know that we can just take the square of the first one, which is x squared. The square of the last one is 81, and they're separated by a minus sign. Getting a little more complicated, 6x squared is 36x squared. 4 squared is 16, and they're separated by a minus sign. Very, very easy to do when we have a difference of squares. Now down at the bottom it says use mental math to find these. So what's going to happen with these is we want to be able to write these in a way that's similar to what we just learned using our shortcuts. So 30 is really 30 plus 1, right? So I could take 30 plus 1 and square that. Well, without a calculator I can do this now because our pattern was we square the first one, right? We multiply those two numbers together. 30 times 1 is 30, and then we double it. So 30 times 2 is 60, and then to that we add the last term, 1 squared. Well, 30 squared, 3 times 3 is 9, and we add 2 zeros. 30 times 30 is 900, plus 60 plus 1, well, that gives us 961. So you can check it out on your calculator to verify that that's the right answer. Over here, we're going to use a difference of squares. So this one we're going to call 40 minus 3. That gives us 37, multiplied by 40 plus 3. Well, this is that a minus b, a plus b. It's a difference of two squares. So all we have to do is take the first term, square it. 40 times 40 is 1600. 3 times 3 is 9, and subtract that from 1600. Well, that gives us 1,591. So we don't even need a calculator to multiply those big numbers. Our last slide here says Marcus built a 6-foot deck around his square house. A side of the house is 7x feet. Find the area of his house, including the deck. So what we want to do is we want to be able to write an equation or a binomial for the area of the square. So he has a 6-foot deck all the way around his square house. So let this be the square house, and then he has the 6-foot deck. Well, the side of the house is 7x, and we're going to say that the deck is plus 6. So if we want to square that, all we have to do is square each term, multiply and double, and square. So 7 squared is 49x squared, and then we have 6 squared is 36, and then if we multiply 7 times 6, that's 42x, but now we have to double that, so we get plus 84x. So there's the polynomial that would describe the area of Marcus's house, including the deck. That'll do it for this video. We'll see you next time.